Leonie has covered the understandings that we have around whānau. And I think it's really important to say right now, after that opening kōrero of Leonie, that tamariki is firmly contextualised within whānau. That is really important to keep saying that whānau safety, whānau wellness is paramount, as opposed to the state's rhetoric that tamariki safety is paramount. Because when we look at that singular kind of notion, what happens to our whānau is that it gets dismantled deliberately. So, I do want to mihi to Leonie, because I think in our work we need to think through, think and grow, not only just an understanding, but an application of our own tikanga, an application of our own mātauranga Māori, so that when we are faced with people who work for the ministry, the state in particular, I'm talking about the state for children, the Ministry for Children, we need to, as a collective, as Māori, say whānau is paramount, hapū is paramount, iwi is paramount. So if we keep, it's a critical mass thing, if we keep reiterating that in our own way, we are resisting this idea that the safety of the child is paramount, when actually none of our tamariki live outside their whānau. So why is it that the state insists that that be their byline, their modus operandi, to actually use as a vehicle to interfere in our own development and practices? I think this is a tohu, so I'm just going to talk, and you'll get this PowerPoint later on. Whakapapa holds the stories, the kōrero, the pūrākau of our whānau, our hapū and our iwi. Whānau is the foundation of our kinship structure in Te Ao Māori, and tamariki are unequivocally sit within that particular whānau. So for all of us in the room, it is more, it is about understanding, but it is about application, and it is about a loud voice to actually grow a massive voice around whānau. That our whānau are the heart of our identity, that our whānau are where we raise our tamariki, mokopuna, that our whānau, when strengthened and when supported in ways that come from our worldview, our people will flourish. Mason Jury in 1998, and I've just kind of pulled out three key things. He says whānau is integral to healthy well-being, and that it is a platform upon which our Māori identity and sense of belonging is located. And most importantly, whānau is the primary Māori support mechanism for our mental, physical, spiritual, emotional well-being. And I am particularly talking about te wharitapa whā. So when all those things are in place, when we are well-resourced, when we can do what we need to do from our space of our world, the space where mātauranga Māori resides, then we can be good kaitiaki. We can support our whānau. We can move our whānau from crisis to a space where they are flourishing. And that is not a dream, that is being actualised, and there's a number of whānau, hapū, iwi initiatives and Māori providers out in the community who are leading the way, who are guiding our whānau to begin to grow their own sense of self, and in particular their own whānau agency. I want to talk briefly about the legislative system pertaining to the care and protection of children and young people in this country. The first legislative act for the beginning of that system was in 1867. And 152 years later, we have a system that has 47, maybe 48, I might have missed one out in 2019, but I don't think so, that really is in its own way a colonial house that is built of material that not only captures the mind of our people, but captures the spirit of our people. And it is this notion that, someone else knows what's good for us. That someone else, that being the state, knows how we should raise our tamariki. That someone else, being the state, is the big parent that will determine how we as Māori will operate within their system. So, the system itself undermines whānau, and it's firmly located with a history of New Zealand legislation pertaining to the care and protection. And recently, I think on July the 1st, there's a section that will be, is it on? Okay, cool. I'm just going to go through these. Okay. There is a new piece of reform that will come to the Vulnerable Children's Act, which will look at the CEO having, how do I say this, being given the responsibility to look at the reduction and the disparities that exist with the care of our own children. So the state care is really powerful, and when we understand that, it is really important to resist and to be resilient, to challenge that, and to actually say no. And everyone in this room has heard about the number of children that are being uplifted by the state, and we only need to look at what happened in Hawke's Bay with that young mum and the terror and trauma that she endured during the time that she birthed her baby, to know that this happens on a regular basis. This is not a once a week. If you calculate all the regions that the state operates in, the ministry operates in, and you calculate that by the number of children, say one area is having children uplifted on a daily basis, you will see that these numbers, even though the numbers are reported, are skewed. So in talking to one provider in Hauraki, she indicated that 10 or 11 babies over there are being uplifted weekly. So what we are seeing is, what we are trying to expose is something that is not a scab, it's a massive hakiaki in the system. It's massive. And so that is, for us, that is the purpose of being here today. How do we challenge that? How do we actually stop that? And as Leonie says, how do we question, or how do we think about the state being, is the state, the current ministry process, an ally or a hoariri for us? So I spoke, so for me, colonisation is alive and well in the legislation. It keeps its clause, its structure firmly embedded in the ground, in the whenua of our ancestors, and it continues to operate in a way that serves to just undermine our structures, our way of being, our knowledge, our whānau whānau hapū iwi, tikanga practices, and the question for everyone is, what is it for the state? Why is the state here? Why is it doing that? And the state control over our children is about control over us. It's intergenerational, as Leonie has said. It's relentless, and it has, it has a whakapapa that has been here for 152 years, which means that over the course of that time, it has grown in power and strength. And there are many people today who work for the state in the room, and this kōrero is about, putting on that disruptive suit that we all have to wear. If we really are truly in the space of wanting to have a system that works for us, what will we do about that? So how will we be those disruptors? What is it that we will do internally, and can we do anything internally? Or what is it that we will do externally? And finally, I just want to say that the state's control with regard to our tamariki is about having control over our future generations. So I think that it's really important that we rise up, we man up or women up. We take arms and actually move to a place where we are warriors, where we are champions of actually developing a system that actually is grounded in our tikanga, our worldview, our mātauranga Māori, so that our children, ngā heke, ngā uri whakaeke, can see and be in a space where they are flourishing, and they can continue to intergenerationally transmit that way of being. Okay, so I'm going to just go through this. We're not going to go through every legislation, but I just wanted to show everybody every piece of legislation, and this timeline is actually on the New Zealand Violence Clearinghouse, if anybody wants to see it. And the only part that's not on there is that 2019 piece, which I actually got from an article written by Kylie Quince Jacinta Ruru, which has just recently been published by Ngā Pai o Te Māramatanga. So here are all the bits of legislation that made the ministry and all its past iterations, social welfare, SIRFs, I can't remember all the names, the system that it is now. And so, I wanted to highlight the blue bits because they really say what those pieces are about. So, not a lot of things, and I think if you look at the first one, Neglected and Criminal Children Act 1867 passed, repealed by the Industrial Schools Act 1882. And I was at a hui a couple of years ago, and a Pākehā woman came up to me and said to me, well, those acts were for everyone. Like it was a gift or something. And I said, yes, that is true. I said, but which group of people did it impact most? What was the purpose of those acts? And when you look at, I'm not going to talk about colonisation. I'm sure everybody in this room has had, in one form or another, discussions and listened to a number of noted scholars around colonisation as a vehicle for maintaining power and control. We know that those acts were about our ancestors. They were about our tūpuna. They were about keeping them in place. Even the Industrial Schools Act, they wanted maids and labourers. They didn't want us to have power. They didn't want us to still be in our own tino rangatira. So it's really, it's an interesting and horrendous timeline of how one, a foreign group, an invading group, a colonial group comes to a country, you know, visits undiscovered land via their scientists and their navigators, you know, then brings in the missionaries, then brings in the drugs, you know, in this case the alcohol, and then they start to, and then they have a treaty, of course, and then they start to construct these pieces of legislation that are there to maintain, or to grow, well, to take the land, grow their power and control, and maintain their power and control. So the evidence is in. The evidence is there, and we can all, you know, see for ourselves that even some of the titles of these pieces of legislation are pretty heinous. You know, it's like, you know, we're unthinking, we're ignorant, we're whatever. There's nothing about, you know, whakamana te tangata. No, there's nothing about, you know, ko te Taonga o Taku Ngākau, ko ngā mokopuna act. It is exactly the opposite of that. Oh. Okay. So, as a result of the legislation, here we are today, and, you know, we are in a state of flux. We have those who work within the system, who are trying to work for our people, and I acknowledge you. I may not necessarily agree with you, but I acknowledge the work that you do. Mostly because, you know, we have to address the legislation, its application on many levels. But ultimately, I am in total agreement with Leone that actually the system itself is a broken system, and it will never be healed from the inside. And for our people, what it means is that we need to go back to our tupuna knowledge and create our own processes, or you know, or strengthen our own processes, because they were already there to assure that we can live, and our tamariki can live, and our mokopuna can live in a place that is conducive to being a flourishing, growing a flourishing whānau, a flourishing hapū, and a flourishing iwi. So I want to just take a moment to really talk about this recent article that's come out, and it's titled Care and Protection of Tamariki Māori in the Family Court System, and the authors are Tania Williams, Jacinta Ruru, Horiana Irwin Esau, Kylie Quince and Heather Gifford. And you can find this, you know, for everybody. This article is part of the Te Arotahi series. It's a think piece, and it really is looking at, in particular, how, and most of these people are lawyers, so they are entrenched in the legal system, how in their mind, the current change of the Section 7A will be an opportunity for Māori to be part of the development and rollout of that reform. So here's the reform. And what the writers are suggesting is that the potential to change the care and protection for tamariki Māori is in this new piece of legislation, which actually is enforced in July. So that will be interesting actually to follow, because as we know, if anybody's been following the development of legislation across the country, the whānau hapū iwi piece of the care and protection legislation, while it has been in there for a number of years, has not been practiced. And we have a lot of our tamariki being given over to non-Māori. That actually there is, to me, no effort made to find within a very strong whānau system, someone that can negotiate and find a place for a child within their own whānau. So there have been, and there are pieces of legislation that can actually do that. The question is, how does the state actually want to engage with that process? And we're in a period of time where the media is serving us by exposing the kind of violations that are occurring with our tamariki as a result of the ministry, the state itself uplifting our tamariki and the kind of strategies that they employ to do that piece of activity. So while I'm not a fan of the media, I'm a total fan of using it to expose what kinds of practice the ministry, and in particular those who work in the ministry, the lengths that they will go to uplift, in this case. I'm talking about the Hastings case, for example, and there are many others, it's just not a one-off. The length they will go to uplift one of our kids, one of our tamariki. So the writers posit that this section reform is an opportunity to develop Kaupapa Māori models to support and reduce the disparities of the number of tamariki Māori and rangatahi who come to the attention of the state. And I'm interested in the word "come to the attention of the state." I don't know how one does that, but I suspect that it's not. They haven't come to the attention of the state. They've been tracked by the state. So the use of the language is misleading, and we need to understand how is it that we're going to really think into that space of looking at the systems that track whānau whakapapa, the systems that track children coming from one particular whānau, and then track the next generation down, and then the next generation down. So this is the courageous conversation for all of us in the room. And at the end of the day, there's some really there are movements. Some of them are underground movements where our Māori providers will find a way to intervene so that children aren't uplifted. There are movements to protest against, and I said taking our children. At 2 o'clock in the morning I should have wrote stolen, but I was feeling generous for some reason, for stealing our children. So, there are movements afoot, and it requires all of us, Māori and allies, to actually, take the state on, contest the state, and actually move to develop processes that are more conducive to the health and well-being of our people. They assert, the writers also believe that this reform asserts a Māori position in the framing and implementing of other future amendments that do not continue to perpetuate the overrepresentation of tamariki Māori and rangatahi in state care. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see how that progresses. And that there is a strong potential to work within the current system to reduce the numbers of tamariki in state care, thus strengthening the position of whānau, hapū and iwi Māori to take care of our own tamariki. We'll wait and see about that too. And I say that, I say that in a way where I think that we've had 150 years, 2 years of this system, and no intervention with any kupu Māori within the state's legislation has made a major difference to the state's control of our tamariki. And we all know in the room that the numbers of children, our children, being uplifted is increasing every day. So I'm going to leave that there. My PowerPoint will be available to everybody, so if you want to look at that article, please do. It's on the slide. So I want to talk about a counter-narrative, and Leonie has touched on that. Because, for me, the state system insists on perpetuating a position that maintains its current status. The system has been constructed for its own dominant, white privileged and racist power base, and has no intention of sharing any of its power and resources equitably with Māori. So, to me, that's the reality. We're up against a state that does not share, that has no interest in being a partner to us, that, the current position is that you be a provider, and then you come under the scrutiny of the state system and how you will look at it, and how you will look after tamariki. I want to advocate for mātua whānau to return, because I believe that system supported our whānau. It was ours in its construction, and the success of it saw its demise. The success of mātua whānau saw its own demise. So, we've had opportunities in our history to look at how we engage our own mātauranga Māori with our tamariki, and when they are really successful, they are taken out by the government. So, in short, the state doesn't care about our whānau and tamariki wellbeing. And the state, and I'm going to quote, this is Mary Pittman's line, the state thrives on the misery of our people. It's an income generating process. If we look at the number of children in state care, which is approximately 65%, if a miracle happened and those children were returned to whānau hapū iwi groups and their resources went with them, what would happen to the state? Yeah. So you can see in that small analogy that that's why the state is its own self-perpetuating, dominating mechanism, because its resources would be depleted just about. And what would they have to do? But what is important is that they do not want to share the resources. So, I think it is incumbent on us, upon all of us, and our allies and our people who support Māori being, whānau hapū iwi being their own, standing in their own tino rangatira, to really think about hopes and dreams, and to really think about also setting new realities. To be able to close your eyes for a moment, park the state system and think, what if? What if we could do this? What if we could make that? What would that look like for us? Okay, so on that, I've got a little activity, and it is about dreaming the big dream. And I call this activity is about creating something different, and creating something new or old, as it's based on tupuna knowledge. Creating what I coined a Kaupapa Māori oranga system. And this system is about assisting whānau in crisis and moving towards and supporting them and guiding them and resourcing them to journey towards to being a whānau, a flourishing whānau, a whānau that's healthy and well. So I'm probably going to give you 15 minutes. 10 minutes, Leonie says. And you can think about this over the course of a day, but I want you in your tables just to think about an area of the state that you could create an overarching Kaupapa Māori statement of care policy. And within the policy, try and think about one, not three, because we're running out of time, one particular component that will be the vehicle for looking at a delivery mechanism. Yeah. So this is the big dream. No barriers. Think about what you want to, what would you like to see, as a group, as a table, and then think about one component of that will be act as a driver to look at local rohe, whānau hapū iwi delivery mechanism. And underneath that, create a iwi rohe or provide an implementation package. So, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that. We unfortunately don't have time to share, and I'm sorry that I can't give you 152 years, but anyway, you can have the next 152 years. But I think it's really important because, like Leonie said, before kohanga, there was nothing. There was nothing. So dream big, dream outside, your current experience, and dream about a policy of care that will move our, that can be realised, that can be actualised in our communities. So 10 minutes, kia ora. So I just want to say, to end this, I did do this activity to see if I could actually do it. I won't show you my, I'll show you, that's what I did at 1 o'clock this morning, because I was thinking, good idea, but can it actually happen? So I'm just going to leave that there for a minute, but I do want to say that, to complete this kōrero, I want to say that we should really remember the words of Te Puia Hirangi. Mehe mea ka moemoe a au, ko au anake. Mehe mea ka moemoe a tātou, ka tae e tātou. If I dream alone. If we all dream, we can all achieve. Nō reira, raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou.